Welcome. For those who don't know, my name is Jenny. This is a restore class, not core and restore, just restore. So this is a very slowed down practice. It's really nice for just taking time to settle in, to take stock in the body and in the mind. And props are often utilized. So there are a few different things that you can grab if you want. Definitely not necessary for your practice. They can just kind of be a little added support. So blocks of some sort, something kind of the size, shape, something that can give you a little lift, a little support, something along those lines. You also may want to grab a blanket or two of various sizes. This could again be used for a little cushion, a little bit of lift, a little support. You also may want to grab a larger blanket if you don't have access to a cushion, or the ultimate goal is a bolster. These things are amazing. But if you don't have one of those, grab some pillows, couch cushions, again, a larger blanket, something along those lines. And I'll explain how to use the props in each position, but I'll also give options of not using props in case you don't have things at your house to utilize. So take a little bit of time to just gather your props, whatever you've got access to, and then meet me on your mat. We're gonna start lying down. You can't even put a blanket over your mat. That could be a nice little added cushion. And as we lay down, if it feels good to have the knees bent and the feet planted on the ground, that can be a nice little release for the low back. Or the legs could be extended if that feels better. And then let's bring the right hand to the belly and the left hand to the heart. And just allow yourself to settle in. So bring a little awareness to your spine. And if you need to, adjust a little bit so that you have some length in the spine. Position the head so that the chin is lifting towards the ceiling, but that the neck is just an extension of the spine. So you have nice neutral length through the spine. Start to feel into the areas of your body that are touching the ground. You can also use props here if you'd like. While you're lying back, you could wrap up in a blanket, you could slide a bolster or your cushion underneath the knees. And with the hands on one hand on the belly, one hand on the heart, just start to notice your breath. Start to notice how deep the breath is going. If it's just your hand on the heart that is rising, if you're only breathing into your chest. Notice if maybe the hand on the belly is rising and falling as well, taking the breath all the way into the belly. Notice the effects on the mind and on the body as you observe the breath. And if you find that your breath is pretty shallow, if you're just breathing into the chest, start to deepen that breath. Trying to let the belly rise on the inhale and fall on the exhale. Working to take deeper, longer breaths. And start to notice the effect of these deeper breaths on the mind and on the body. And if you'd like to work with ujjayi breathing, you're welcome to bring in that activation of the muscles in the back of the throat. Those same muscles that you use when you're firing up a window, or when you're not firing up, when you're fogging up a window or a mirror, that kind of sound. All just ways that we are connecting to the breath that is helping us to become more present, helping us to get into our bodies and to really get into our current present moment. And just continue to breathe, to feel, and to just gather information. It's one of the great aspects of this class that's more slowed down pace, is that we're able to really go inside, really dig deep, and really just be present to what's going on. We're ultimately just gathering information here. Information about what's going on in our bodies. How are we feeling right now? How are we feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically? What thoughts are arising through our practice, and how do we want to respond to those thoughts and actions? And right now, we don't want to respond. Right now, we just want to observe. We want to notice. We want to be curious about those things that come up without getting attached to them. And that's where the real challenge of this practice can come in. It's through your observation, not allowing that to pull you out of your present moment, to pull your focus away from being in your body and in your mind. And know that it is a practice. So the mind's going to wander. We are going to get pulled into the past or projected into the future. And the goal is to not prevent that, but to recognize when that happens and then find our different tools that work for us to bring us back to that present moment. We practice on our mats so that when we step off our mats into our everyday life, we have those tools, we have that power to start to recognize when we're not living in the present moment, when we're getting pulled into the past or projected into the future. When we get that opportunity to come back to our present moment and just live our lives more fully, more present, and more aware. So continue to feel into the breath, checking in with the body, noticing any aches or pains, any tension or tenderness, anywhere that maybe just needs a little extra love or attention tonight. And as you feel ready, you can leave the hands where they are if this is feeling good, or you can release them down alongside the body. If the legs are straight, or if you have any props supporting you, we'll go ahead and move any props out of the way and bend the knees, planting the feet on the ground. And we're just going to start with some gentle, simple pelvic tilts. So leaving the hips connected to the ground. On an inhale, we'll start to tilt the pelvis up. So it starts to lengthen through the tailbone, and you start to press the low back into the mat. And then on the exhale, we'll start to tilt the pelvis down so that it exaggerates that arch and lifts the low back even further off the mat. And we'll just take a few rounds here. Inhaling to tilt the pelvis up so the hip bones start to lift up towards the ribs. And on the exhale, tilting the pelvis down, hip bones start to go down towards the tailbone. So just a very subtle movement. May not even look like I'm doing much here. But just working on that little tilt through the pelvis. Working with that articulation of the lumbar spine, the low back. It's maybe a little more challenging if you have really tight hip flexors, or notice if you're feeling any pulling in the hamstrings. You can play with the placement of the feet too, maybe walking the feet a little further away. And then you're welcome to stay with these pelvic tilts. If you do want to take it a little bit further, finding a solid connection down towards the feet. On the inhale, as you
tilt the pelvis up, lengthening through the tailbone. Maybe press into the feet and into the shoulders to start to lift the hips up off the ground, coming up towards a bridge pose. And then on the exhale, just as slow, setting each vertebrae at a time down nice and slow. As the hips touch the ground, then continue with that downward tilting so that you get that arch in the back. So again, we're either just working through pelvic tilts, keeping the hips connected to the earth, or with those pelvic tilts, adding the pelvic lift up towards a bridge pose. Staying connected to the breath. You can even link the breath to the movements. Now you're welcome to continue, again, either with these pelvic tilts or pelvic lifts, or we're going to end up in a bridge pose, but we want it to be supported. So this will be one of the poses where we definitely want to use a prop, and you can use any of the props that I suggested here. So you could bring in a block underneath. It gives you a few options for height. You could bring in a bolster, cushion, pillow, stack of pillows, rolled up blanket, anything like that. Just enough to put it underneath the hips and set the pelvis down so that we're in a nice supported bridge, so that the hips are lifting. We're getting a little stretch, or maybe a lot of stretch in the hip flexors, but we're not having to exert the energy that we would in a traditional bridge pose. So we've got that support here. And continue to breathe. And if having that hand or two on the belly was a good anchor for you at the beginning, you're welcome to do that here. You can also see the rise and fall of the belly, so if your eyes aren't closed, then maybe you focus on that. It's all just about finding different anchors, different tools that we can use to help keep us present. Can be the sensation in the body as well. So tuning into where you're feeling the stretch, where you're feeling some strengthening, where you're feeling some activation. And so now that we're here in our supported bridge, we've got some other options that we could explore if you'd like. You're welcome to stay here if this is feeling awesome, getting that stretch in the hip flexors, working a little bit of back bending here, that lift in the pelvis. If you do want to take the stretch in the hip flexors a little bit deeper, maybe start with playing with extending maybe just the right leg out along the ground, just noticing how that feels. That will probably increase the intensity of the hip flexor as well as the back bend in the low back. So pay attention to that. If you're taking that option, then whenever it feels right, maybe you switch it out to the other leg, just to gradually kind of work your way into this to see if it's even something that would feel good in your body right now. And maybe you just continue to alternate extending one leg out and then the other, or maybe if it feels safe, you take both legs extended out. Now that's going to be even more intensity in the hip flexors and the arching of the low back. So continue to pay attention, and if this stretch isn't feeling good for you at all, keep the feet planted on the ground, knees bent. Few other options that you could explore in this position. Again, you're welcome to stay here or have those legs extended. You could also start to extend the legs up towards the sky. The knees could draw in towards the chest, keeping the knees bent, or you could extend those legs up. And you don't need to lock out in the knees, nothing rigid here. And this can just be a nice release for the legs. This helps the hips to kind of relax and release, and you may feel a little little more less tension in the low back. It can be a nice release of synovial fluids, and a little break for the feet, for the legs. You can stay here, just the legs hanging out in space, or you could bring in a little exploration, maybe spreading out through the toes. You could point and flex through the feet or roll out through the ankles. You could also explore with some larger movements if that would feel good in your body today. Maybe scissoring the legs or opening them up side to side. You could bend the knees, bringing the bottoms of the feet to touch. So with the legs extended, this is like a supported shoulder stance. So you could also take the toes not all the way, but towards the top of the head in a plow pose. And that's going to be a little more intensity in the hamstrings and in the low back. So we'll be here for another minute or two. So you've got lots of options to explore with whatever feels good here with those hips raised. Legs extended, knees bent, feet planted on the floor or legs extended. So whatever feels right for you here. Take about 10 more rounds of breath in your exploration. And the reason I give you so many options is not to overwhelm you, but to help you to understand that there's not just one right way to do any yoga pose. And a lot of what yoga is these days can get very convoluted. A lot of people think that you need to be flexible or strong or have a lot of money or have a lot of time. I'm one class at a time trying to debunk all of that. So as far as the options go, I just want to give you plenty of tools in your toolbox, plenty of ways to explore your own body and your own practice so that you can find what feels right for you. So that if you go into another class that maybe the teacher doesn't give as many options, you then know that you can create options of your own. You can do things that the teacher doesn't say because that's what feels best for you. Last couple rounds of breath here. And then whenever you feel ready to come out, we'll plant the feet on the ground once again. Find that solid connection there. And then pressing into the feet, slowly start to lift the hips just high enough so you can slide the prop out from underneath. And then just as we did with the pelvic lifts, nice and slow, set the hips down one vertebrae at a time. Awesome work. From here, it might feel good to step the feet out wider than hip distance and heels away from the glutes. Maybe take some windshield wipers side to side. You could also take any other movements that would feel really nice here. And as you feel ready, we're going to draw the right knee in towards the chest. Your choice, if the left foot is planted on the ground with the knee bent, that's going to be a little more gentle option. Maybe for the low back, it'll give you a little more stability and won't be as intense in the hips. Or you can extend that left leg out along the ground. So just pay attention, notice how that feels. We'll bring both hands to the outside or to the top of the right knee. And then using the hands, we'll just kind of start to circle the knee around, big or small as you'd like. Just kind of working the top of the femur bone in the hip socket. Maybe giving yourself a little hip flexor massage, and just kind of getting that hip joint ready to see some action. And whenever you feel ready, we're going to take this into a half happy baby. So the knee is going to continue to draw in towards the right armpit. We'll flex the toes back, and then with the knee bent, send the right toes up towards the sky. And then you can grab on behind the knee, anywhere up the leg, or if you can, reaching for the outside of the foot. And then you can use the hand or both hands to gently drive the knee down towards the ground, kind of in towards the armpit, just as far as feels okay. So pay attention to how this is feeling in the hip and the hamstring. Maybe be feeling this in the quad. Stay aware of how this feels in the knee as well. So again, nothing forceful. No pain, no gain is not applicable here. We want to challenge our bodies. We want to find our edge and kind of push it a little bit, because we oftentimes can surprise ourselves with what we are capable of. But we don't want to force anything. We don't want to cause any injury or pain or anything like that. We want our practices to be sustainable, something that we can do for the rest of our lives without the practice causing injuries. Fantastic work. Whenever you feel ready, we'll release that happy baby, or half happy baby, and then we'll bring the left hand to the right knee to gently guide it over towards the left, taking a little bit of a twist here. Now it's still your choice. That left knee could stay bent, and you could drop both knees over, kind of a stacked knee twist, or you could keep that, or the left leg could stay extended as you bring the right knee across. And now twisting can feel really good, but there's a tendency to sometimes twist too deep. That's not necessary. We don't have to go very far to maintain a healthy function in the spine with twisting. So don't feel like we have to, drop the right knee all the way over to the ground or anything like that. And we can kind of play with the intensity of the twist by the positioning of the right shoulder. You're welcome to have that shoulder raised up off the ground. Maybe you even lie a little bit more on the left side of the body. That's going to be a little less intense in the twist, and it could feel really, really good. If you do want to bring a little more opening in the chest, then you can start to let that right shoulder, or invite the right shoulder towards the earth. It definitely doesn't need to touch. You could also extend the right arm out, finding a little more opening through the chest and that pec muscle, a little bit into the tricep. And continue to breathe here, trying to take those deep belly breaths, which will be a little different sensation, all twisted up in the belly. But that can also be a good indication. If you're still able to keep that breath fluid, then your twist is probably sustainable. But if you feel like you have to hold the breath, or it feels forced or stagnant, it's a good sign that you've gone a little too deep. So we've got just a few more rounds of breath here, feeling into the twist, adjusting as needed. And then whenever you feel ready, nice and gentle, we'll start to bring that right knee back up towards center. And then we're going to keep the knee bent and let it open all the way out to the right, placing the foot kind of near the inner edge of the left leg so that we're taking what looks like a reclined tree pose. So the right knee is bent. Left leg could be extended, or again, if it feels better to have that knee bent and foot planted on the ground, feel free to take that. So taking this into that opening in the hips, maybe getting a little more in that inner right thigh. And if there's a lot of space between the knee and the ground, and gravity is doing its job a little too well, then you could slide a block or a stack of books or something underneath that right knee for a little bit of support, just to fill in that space. Continue to check in with the breath. Feel into the body. Just gather that information. Notice the mind. Just a couple more rounds of breath here. And as you begin to feel ready, keeping that right knee open, we'll just draw the left knee in towards the chest and take it nice and slow just to see how this sensation feels. You could bring both hands to the top of the left knee to kind of help draw it in, but nothing forceful. That may increase the intensity in that opening in the right hip. Might feel a little more in the low back or in the hamstring. Just notice, listen, trust your body. And then whenever you feel ready, we'll just draw that right knee up. You can bring the right hand to the right thigh, to outside right thigh, to help draw it up if that feels good. And then bringing the knees in towards the chest. You can grab the outsides or tops of the knees, or even wrap the arms around, hug the legs in. If some rocking side to side would feel good here, or maybe circling through the knees. And if it doesn't feel good to have the feet off the ground and knees drawing in, you're welcome to keep the feet planted on the ground, maybe taking some windshield wipers or any other movements here between sides, maybe noticing any difference in the right and left side before we even things out. And then we'll start to take that little series on the other side. So releasing the right foot, left knee continues to draw in towards the chest. And again, it's your choice if that right knee is bent, foot planted on the ground, or if it's extended out. Again, that extension could bring a little more intensity in the hips. Maybe it's a little too much through that hip flexor, and planting that foot can also give you a little extra stability there. With the hands on the left knee, we'll just start to kind of move it around, again, using the top of the femur in that hip socket to maybe get a little self-massage and kind of just get that hip ready. And as you are ready, taking this into our half happy baby. So drawing that left knee in towards the left armpit, flexing the left toes back, and then with that knee bent, taking the foot up towards the sky. Hands could be behind the knee, drawing in anywhere up the leg, or maybe you reach for the outside of the left foot. And again, those hands are there to add a gentle urging, or I guess urging is a little extreme, a gentle nudging of the knee down towards the ground, towards that left armpit. And only if that feels good. If having the foot extended with the knee bent is enough stretch for you, stay there. Find the breath, tune into the body. Notice any differences in each side and feel free to adjust. You don't have to do the same thing on each side. We work both sides to bring balance, but they're not identical. Each side, they're related, They're not identical. Awesome work. And when it feels good for you, releasing that half happy baby. And we'll take our twist here. So you can use the right hand to gently guide the left knee across the body and into your twist. And your choice, the position of that right foot, whether the leg is extended or you can stack the knees and take the twist that way. And again, tune in. There's a lot going on here, maybe in the hips and the low back and the glutes, up through the spine, into the shoulders and into the chest. So again, you have those options. Lifting that left shoulder off the ground, coming a little more onto the right side of the body will give you a little more gentle twist. Or you could invite that left shoulder down towards the ground. Definitely doesn't need to touch. Maybe extending that left arm out into a T or into a goalpost, maybe finding a little more stretch in the chest area. And again, noticing the breath. Breath is always a good indication if we've gone too deep into a pose or if we have allowed ourselves to get out of our present moment, forget to tune into the breath. Couple more rounds of breath here in your twist. And whenever you begin to feel ready, nice and slow, coming out of the twist, coming back onto the back, allowing the left knee to come up towards the ceiling. And then we'll take our fallen tree, if you will. So letting that left knee continue to open out towards the left, knee stays bent. And the foot can come anywhere along the inside of the right leg. Hands can be doing whatever feels good here. One hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. Arms could be open or spread out into a T or anything else that would feel good here. And if there's a lot of space between the ground and your left knee and it feels like that may be taking you too deep into the twist, or into the stretch, inside a block or a book, a pillow, something underneath, just for a little support. When we hold poses, there is a tendency for a little release of tension, maybe a little more increase in flexibility, and just with gravity naturally working, to kind of open up a little more. And sometimes going into that deepness or going a little deeper can be very beneficial, but it can also sometimes take us too deep, too far. So we want to tune in so that we can notice the difference. When it feels right for you, keeping the left knee where it is. And if that right leg was extended, you can bend the knee and plant the foot on the ground. You could also continue to draw that right knee in towards the chest and just noticing how that can affect the sensation, the stretch, finding what feels good on this side. And when you feel ready, we'll draw that left knee back in towards center. You can use the left hand for some assistance there. And once again, maybe drawing the knees in towards the chest, rocking side to side, or circling through the knees, or any other movements here that would feel good. You could extend the legs up towards the sky and shake them out. You could extend the legs out along the ground. Take windshield wipers, whatever the body's craving here. And then whenever you feel ready, we're just going to roll onto one side of the body. Pausing just for a little moment here, getting off the spine since we were lying down for a solid half an hour. And then as you feel ready, just gently press yourself up, coming into a seated position. We're going to do a little bit of stretching through the hips. One thing that can be useful here, especially if you have tight hips or a tight low back, even tightness in the hamstrings, is bringing in a little lift. So just a blanket of some sort, or you could even go as high as, a block or something. But just to lift the pelvis a little bit, and it just kind of opens things up a little bit more if you have a tendency to be tight in this area. So we're going to do cow face pose. So getting into this one, we're going to draw the right knee in towards the chest. And then you can cross that foot over. So crossing it over towards the left, flexing the left toes back. And maybe this is where you stay. If you're getting a solid amount of sensation on the outside of the right hip, then definitely stay here. What we want is both sits bones connected to the ground, so nice and solid there. If you want, you could also bend that left knee and draw the heel in, and then you can start to work to stack the knees. Now, my hips are really tight, so my knees don't line up. Don't feel like you have to. Don't feel like that's a necessity here. So with the knee bent and the knees drawing together, you're going to get sensation on both hips. So with that leg extended, it'll probably just be in the right hip. So your choice again here. Staying in tune with the knees, with the hips. We want that solid connection to the sits bone, so we have the squaring of the hips. Awesome work. And then from that squaring of the hip bones, from that solid base, lengthen up through the crown of the head, sitting up nice and tall. Hands can just come down alongside the body, or can anywhere along the legs, wherever you want. But sitting up nice and tall, we'll inhale to lengthen up through the crown of the head. And then on an exhale, just drop the right ear over towards the right shoulder. Just opening up through that left side of the neck. I know we've got a lot of sensation going on here between the hips, maybe even in the knees and in the neck. So we can just listen, pay attention. Don't force anything. Don't feel like you have to make any certain shape. Be guided by sensation. Be guided by intuition. On your next inhale, start to raise the head back up towards neutral. And then on the exhale, drop the left ear over towards the left shoulder. Opening up through the right side of the neck. Adjusting through the body as needed. We do want to try to find a little bit of stillness in the poses that we hold, but we shouldn't be holding the poses if they're causing pain, if they could be causing any damage, any injuries. Find the breath. Awesome work. On your next inhale, just allow the head to raise back up towards neutral. And then we'll uncross through the legs. It can be a nice assistance to use the hands to kind of uncross. And if it would feel good, extend through the legs and shake them out, or you could bring the hands back behind you, planting the feet on the ground and taking some seated windshield wipers. Anything that would feel good between sides here. And then whenever you feel ready, we'll just set this up on the other side. So starting with the legs extended, drawing the left knee in towards the chest and then stepping that foot over the right. So crossing over there. And again, maybe this is where you stay. You have a solid connection to the sits bones and you're getting a nice stretch on the outside of the hip. If you do want to go a little bit further, bending that right knee, drawing the heel in, so that you're in kind of an extreme cross-legged position called cow face. And the knees are working to draw together. Toes are flexed back. And again, we want that solid connection to the sits bones. So don't compromise that to get the twisting of the legs. We want a nice solid connection there. And then from that base, lengthening up through the crown of the head. Breathing into it, finding that breath. And then as you feel ready, taking a nice deep inhale to lengthen up, and exhale, just drop the chin down towards the chest. So we're sitting with a nice tall spine, and then releasing the head down to get a stretch through the back of the neck. Continue to check in, to make any adjustments as needed. And again, don't feel like you have to do the same exact pose on this side as you did on the other. Listening to our bodies, honoring the differences. On your next inhale, slowly start to raise the head back up towards neutral. And then if you like using the hands as kind of support here, maybe just walk the hands back behind you so that you can find a little opening across the chest. Or if the balance is okay, or if it feels okay to release the hands, then maybe interlace the hands back behind you and lengthen down through the hands. And then staying aware of the neck. On an inhale, just start to lift the chin up towards the sky. So we don't want to dump all the weight back into the head. We do want to protect those delicate bones in the cervical spine, those little bones in the neck. So as we are looking up towards the sky, we're finding extension through the throat, lifting in the chin without crunching in the back of the neck. So we're still finding opening and lifting here. Again, maybe with the hands back behind you, you draw the shoulder blades together to find a little more opening in the chest, or if the hands are interlaced, rooting the hands down towards the ground. Just a few more rounds of breath here. Beautiful work. When you feel ready, release the hands if they were clasped. Slowly start to draw the head back towards neutral. And then uncrossing through the legs. Again, you can use the hands for some assistance here. And then taking any movements, any stretches that would feel good. Oof, feeling that in the hips. Awesome work. Now from here, we're going to continue to work with the hips, but we just got a nice stretch on the outside. Let's work the inside. So we're going to come into a cobbler's pose. And this again is where sitting up on a blanket or even maybe as high as a block can come in handy. So we're going to bring the bottoms of the feet to touch and let the knees drop open. So we're getting this opening in the hips. And the positioning of the heels can kind of determine how deep of a stretch you get. So the further away the heels are, the less intense this opening in the hips is going to be. The closer the heels are, the more intense. And just like in our fallen tree pose, if you've got a lot of space between the ground and your knees like me, and gravity's doing its job a little too well, you can slide a prop underneath each knee. And then we're going to come into a forward fold here. And so if you already kind of have to round out in the back or kind of lean back here, that's when you want to lift the pelvis. So you want to sit on something so that you can sit up nice and tall, helps you to tilt the pelvis forward. And then we're just going to start to bow forward. So coming towards a forward fold. And it's so tempting here to grab onto the feet and pull yourself down. So if you can, just turn the palms up. Kind of just letting the arms hang out there so that we're not even tempted. Dropping the chin towards the chest, letting the head hang heavy. And if that's a little too much in the neck and shoulders, you could also bring in a pile of props, however you'd like, maybe a block on the feet or a stack of blocks. You could also stack up pillows or something, just if you want to give that neck some support. But a nice release. Here, we want to be able to release the head, neck, and shoulders either just down towards gravity or towards a prop. Find your breath. And just continue to listen to the body. Allow yourself to surrender to this pose, surrender to the weight of gravity, as long as it doesn't, again, like I talked about, take you too deep to where you feel like you're causing harm or damage. Staying aware of anything that arises for you. Can sometimes be a release of emotions as we work with hip openers. That's a very common place that we store our traumas, our undealt with emotions, our stresses. That and the neck as well, which we've been doing a little bit. Neck, shoulders. So continue to be gentle with yourself. A few more rounds of breath here. And as you feel ready, nice and slow, we're just going to start to walk the hands back, starting to come back up from our forward fold. And then to counter this for our last stretch before our Shavasana, we're going to take a reclined cobbler's pose. So we just did a forward fold, now we're going to recline. So lots of ways to take this. You can just lie flat on the back and open up through the knees, positioning the hands however you'd like. This can be a little intense on the low back. So 2 ways of alleviating that without any props is before you take the hip opener to lift the pelvis, tilt it down like we did in our pelvic tilts, and then set the low back down so that it can spread out so there's no arch in the back. That can help relieve some compression. Or bringing in the lumbar spine for support, so exaggerating that arch. Lifting up through the chest, tucking the shoulder blades underneath, and then finding your hip opener. You can also accomplish those with the use of props. A bolster can be really nice here, cushion, rolled up blanket, anything like that. You could slide it underneath the knees as the knees drop open. You could lift the feet up, elevating the feet as high as the hips. That can also help alleviate some low back issues. You can also wrap up in a blanket here if it's kind of cold. And if you wanted to take this into more of a chest opener, you have the option to tuck the shoulder blades underneath. But you could also lie back along a bolster or rolled up blanket. Just something that you lie the spine down along so it gets a lift in the back of the heart and allows the shoulders to drop down even further than you could if you were just lying flat on the back. So it's just another option for getting that chest opening. Arms can be doing whatever they'd like. The heat turned off in the studio, so it's getting a little cold. I'm gonna wrap myself up. And it can be nice to bring one hand to the heart, one hand to the belly. Both hands could come to the belly, or if you want a little more opening, a little more receptive, you could bring the palms alongside the body or spread them out, opening up into a T or into goalposts. And staying aware of what arises for you. Hip openers and heart openers can be very revealing. When the mind starts to wander, simply bring the focus back to the breath. About another minute or so here. Notice if you can soften anywhere. If you're holding any tension, the mouth, the jaw, or the tongue, around the eyes, the forehead, the neck, the shoulders. As if you're trying to hold yourself in the position. And if so, then how can you reposition yourself to where you could relax? To where you don't have to hold yourself here, but you're being held here. And as I said, this is our last pose before our Shavasana. You're welcome to stay in this pose for Shavasana if this is speaking to you. If there are any final movements that you want to take to help round out your practice before settling in, then whenever you're ready, take as much time as you'd like to explore those final movements, anything the body's craving. And then whenever you're ready, if you would like to get yourself into a different position, then take as much time as you would like to get into your Shavasana. Traditional Shavasana on the back, legs extended, palms turned out, the palms turned up, toes turned out. As always, if that doesn't feel good for you, do something different. Use props to support you in any way. Lie on your side, lie on your belly, come to a seated meditation, whatever works for you. And the goal of the pose of Shavasana is to get yourself into a position where you can release the body fully, where you can surrender. You don't need to hold yourself in any position. And the goal of the pose for the mind is also to surrender. To allow yourself the space and time to take off all the hats you wear throughout the day. To put aside all of the labels that you are given throughout your life. To set down all of the baggage, all of the trauma, all of the defense mechanisms, all of our coping mechanisms. Setting all of that aside and allowing you, who you really are, your being, to just be. Find a little bit of peace in the body and in the mind that you can carry with you. For those of you practicing at home, if you do have more time to dedicate to your Shavasana, please do. Take at least 5 more minutes, upwards of 20, whatever you can give yourself. And know that the peace that we seek on our mats, this peace of mind that comes from being fully present, that is the goal. And that is always with us. We carry that peace within us. And it's through this practice that we are able to find that peace, to tune into that peace, and to find the tools that we need that can bring us back to that peace when we need it. So I encourage you to keep practicing. Keep practicing presence, and that peace will find you. As you begin to feel ready, just bring a little gentle movement back into the body. Taking as much time as you'd like to slowly make your way onto one side of the body if you are lying down and not already there. And wherever you are, just pause for a moment and offer yourself some gratitude. Some gratitude for taking this time, for carving out this time in your busy lives to come step on your mat, to practice presence, to move and breathe, and to connect with inner peace. Whenever you feel ready, gently make your way back up to a comfortable seat. And I'll invite you to bring the hands to heart center or take any other meaningful gesture with the hands. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this gift with you today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I see you, I honor you, and I bow to you. Namaste.